I'm here at the Arctic Circle in Finnish Lapland, and over the next 100 hours, I'm going to attempt to cross all of Europe only using FlixBus.
That's right, with just one ticket, FlixBus will let you travel all the way across Europe from Lapland to Lisbon, covering almost 6,000 kilometers on board their buses, which will take over 100 hours to cross the entire continent, living 5 days and 4 nights on board one of their buses.
And I'm starting to really feel sleep deprived by now.
This is not just any regular bus ride, it's a real test of endurance on board FlixBus. So, a couple of months ago, I asked myself, how bad could this really be? Well, there was only one way to find out. I'm here at the northernmost FlixBus stop in Europe, which just happens to be right on the Arctic Circle line here at Santa Claus village in Finnish Lapland. From here, I've booked just one single ticket all the way to Lisbon, which is the longest journey FlixBus will actually sell you on its own network. So, let's get to it and head over to the bus stop to catch the first of many buses on this trip.
Right, all that's left is just to wait here for the bus to turn up and we'll get this marathon down to Lisbon started.
And after waiting what felt like an eternity in this minus 18-degree weather, here comes our first bus.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like I'm the only passenger getting on board here. And just like that, we are off from Santa Claus village on time at 8:30. Our first bus is line N1207, which we'll catch from here at Santa Claus village, down through Finland, across the Baltic Sea to Estonia, down through Latvia and Lithuania to eventually arrive in Poland, where I'll be getting off at Warsaw airport in about 35 hours. And by the way, this bus actually carries on even further to Krakow. And our journey is off to a beautiful start as we travel through the amazing snow-covered landscapes on our way south through Finland. So I just tried to get cozy in the limited space a FlixBus seat offers. I had some breakfast, listened to some music and just chilled, and so far morale is high as we make our first rest stop of the trip.
So we are about 5 hours in. We have just made a short rest stop here at a random gas station roughly halfway between Oulu and Jyväskylä. So far so good, not much to report, just sat enjoying some music, watching the scenery. It's very pretty with all this snow-covered forest. So yeah, still many hours to go to even get to Warsaw, and then we got another 3 buses after that.
And yes, in theory, this entire journey only involves traveling on 4 different buses. But it turned out that FlixBus had other plans later on the trip, but not in the way I think you would expect. Anyway, we are now back on the road, gradually making our way south through Finland. And honestly, I'm still feeling alright. I've had some more snacks, and while it's definitely not the most comfortable seat in the world, there's power to charge your devices, a reading light, air vents, which is probably as good as it's gonna get on a FlixBus. There was even free working Wi-Fi too, but I mostly just used my cell data. Roughly halfway through Finland, it's time for our bus to pull into a gas station, as now our bus is hungry. This also doubled as a rest stop, but you know, I'm here for the content, so I had to stay on board and get a few shots of them refueling the bus. With the refueling complete, we can now head towards our next stop in Jyväskylä. The winter sun is now slowly starting to set, and while the bus has been fairly empty throughout most of the day, here in Jyväskylä we pick up a lot more passengers. And not too long after, I had to do something I was hoping to avoid as much as possible on this trip: use the bus bathroom. If you're wondering about the color of the water, I think it's some sort of liquid that stops it from freezing.
I mean, it works, but there's no soap or anything or toilet paper, and the flush doesn't really work. But apart from that, it doesn't smell bad, and we can get a number 1 done.
Back at my humble bus home, the last bit of daylight is now starting to disappear, and I settle in for a few more hours on the bus, as we make our way down to Finland's capital, Helsinki. I also gotta say, despite the bus being fairly busy now, it's still very quiet on board here. Our journey continues into the darkness as we approach southern Finland, where most of the country's population actually lives. This also means we swap the more quiet 2-lane roads for proper motorways as the population density increases. This is also when I start wondering, how exactly am I going to sleep on this bus? Because, well, I didn't think to bring earplugs, eye mask or a pillow, which was probably a mistake on my part. I guess we'll see. Anyway, we are now arriving in the capital of Finland, Helsinki, pulling into the massive underground Kampi bus terminal right in the heart of the city under a big shopping mall. The bus terminal spans across 2 different levels and features over 30 bays for buses to park in. More than 700 long-distance buses depart from this station every day, supposedly making it the largest underground bus station in all of Europe. This is where the majority of passengers got off in Helsinki, but we will now continue down to the harbour, which is arguably even more interesting, as we'll now get to see how FlixBus handles our crossing across the Baltic Sea.
I am so happy to finally be off that bus. My back and bum is definitely getting sore now, so it's gonna be nice to have a break on the ferry. So we are sailing with Tallinn, which is one of the 3 operators on the route to Tallinn. All 3 of them use big cruise ferries that takes cars and buses and everything, so it's going to be interesting to see if they take the same bus on the ferry and picks us up again over in Tallinn, or it'll be a new bus and new crew that takes us down to Warsaw. But now we're here at the terminal and we need to go check in, which I think is here. So FlixBus sent me an email a couple of days ago with a ticket, so I think we just have to do a check-in over on the screen here. Right, so I guess we just scan this card here at the gates. Well, that worked without issue, so let's go board this thing. So yeah, seems like there's a whole waiting area up here with shops and restaurants and everything. But unfortunately here for the last sailing, which departs in an hour and a half, not much of it is open.
So, while we wait for boarding to start, I took this opportunity to visit a toilet that's not on board a bus, and then just went back into the quiet terminal and relaxed for a bit.
Right, the ship is ready for boarding, I think, or at least everyone has started to go queue. Right, off to Estonia we go. I haven't been in 2 or 3 years, I think. Not that we'll see much of it on this trip as we'll pass through it during the night, but still nice to go back.
Tonight we are sailing on board Tallinn Megastar, which was built in 2017 in Turku in Finland, and tonight it will have to navigate its way through a very frozen Baltic Sea. We are catching the 22:30 sailing tonight, which is scheduled to complete the trip to Tallinn in 2 hours. I'm unfortunately no expert when it comes to ships, but I think you would classify this as a cruise ferry. It's a fairly large ship spanning across multiple decks with entertainment, shops, multiple restaurants and seating areas. And I think this might be the world's only floating Burger King. Let me know if you know of any others.
It seems like most of the proper restaurants and the better buffet is closed on the late departure, so there was only the shops selling like sandwiches and hot dogs open and Burger King, so that's what we're going for. Nice to get some food in, because we will run through the night and then not get to Warsaw till like 6 PM tomorrow evening, so I don't think there'll be a proper food stop before then, so I'll have to survive off all this and snacks I've packed. And just like that, we're sailing off to Tallinn, even departing 15 minutes early, so I guess we'll just have to wait longer for the bus in Tallinn, but whatever.
And after finishing that very nutritious meal, I went downstairs to the darker relax area to charge my devices, transfer some files, and otherwise just relax while we crossed the Baltic Sea. Two hours later, at 30 minutes past midnight, we arrive at the port of Tallinn. And now it's time to go find our FlixBus again to take us down to Poland.
Right, welcome to Estonia, and it seems like our bus is already waiting here right outside of the ferry terminal. Looking forward to getting some sleep very soon. And it's definitely a different bus from the one we had earlier.
Right, so despite it being two different buses on either side of the Baltic Sea, it is still operated and branded as one line, the N1207. And we still have 18 hours left on board this bus, which will take us down to Warsaw. Legroom on board this bus actually seems a bit better than the previous one, and I was also very happy to see a fairly large overhead rack that even fit my backpack. And right on time at 1 AM, we depart from Tallinn harbour, beginning our adventure through the Baltics. Since we left Lapland this morning, we have covered almost 1,000 kilometers, and overnight we will cover many more kilometers as we travel through the Baltics. Well, I was going to say now that I settled in for a smooth night on board the bus, but then we crashed into the bus terminal in central Tallinn. Luckily, the bus was seemingly fine, and we depart again from Tallinn bus terminal, now heading for the road towards Latvia, and I'm gonna try to get some sleep. Around 6 AM, the bus pulls into Riga, capital of Latvia. I can't exactly say that I'm sleeping well on this bus, but I did manage to doze off for a bit, then woke up, dozed off a bit again, and repeat a couple of more times. The sun is now slowly starting to rise as we cross over the border into Lithuania. I've also got a seatmate now, which unfortunately alongside the daylight made sleeping a lot more difficult.
Right, we're now 24 hours into the journey. Still got basically the whole day to go before we reach Warsaw. Feeling quite tired, I'm hoping to get a nap or two more in. I got a seatmate now, so there's not that much space, but we're making do. Progressing fine, probably gonna listen to some music now, and yeah, we should go to Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, and then we will go on to Poland. It's definitely starting to feel a little rough, but we have many more hours to go, so we can't get our hopes down yet.
As my seatmate went for a quick smoke break here, I had a chance to show you the interior of the bus. It's basically the same as the one in Finland, but we got a full-sized power outlet on this one. And while we were stopped, I also took a quick look at this bus toilet.
It smells of shit in here. Oh, but unlike the other one, there's toilet paper and sink might be. I guess not working. Yeah, so it doesn't smell too good in here, and nothing is really working. But He's trying to pay one. Yay!
Back on the road, we will now spend the next couple of hours heading towards Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. For breakfast, I had some of the snacks from my arsenal, and then eventually we entered the city limits. We cross over the Neris river that Vilnius is built upon, and eventually pull in to the central bus station.
Right, we got a quick 12-minute stop here before we continue, so I am just gonna see if I can manage to pick up something more to drink, because I am running a bit low on liquids.
I forgot to film inside the bus station as I was a little bit worried about missing the bus, but there's a few shops, a ticket office as well as a supermarket.
Right, quick pit stop complete. Got some more water, an iced tea and some taquitos to snack on. And yeah, ready to go for the next, I don't know how long we have left, like 7 hours to Warsaw. Bus is still here, so all good, all good.
Back on board the bus, it actually seems like my seatmate has gotten off here in Vilnius. So I got myself some extra space as we now head down towards the Polish border. And while I did enjoy having some extra space again, I can't say I like these taquitos as they were very old and stale. We are now leaving the Lithuanian capital behind, and also the bigger motorways, as we swap back to 2-lane roads down towards the border. Honestly, on this part of the journey, not a lot happened. We just cruised through Lithuania and then arrived at the border with Poland, where for the first time on this trip, Schengen has failed, and we had to stop for a passport check. For any non-Europeans watching, Schengen is basically a border-free travel zone across much of Europe, but countries can temporarily reintroduce border checks, and some countries interpret temporary and spot checks as meaning pretty much all the time on certain borders. Anyway, welcome to Poland, where honestly there's still not a lot of interesting stuff going on. We are still just on 2-lane roads through the countryside heading towards Białystok, one of the largest cities in eastern Poland. And I'm sure a couple of you are curious about how they actually crew these buses. On this bus route, it seems to be teams of 2 drivers that swap between each other driving every couple of hours, and after around 10 hours, they are relieved by a new crew. In this case, we change crews at the ferry crossing, then again in Vilnius, and seemingly this crew will take the bus all the way to Krakow. We are now heading into Białystok, where I spotted this rather cool looking church and got off the bus briefly to stretch my legs.
Last chance to stretch legs before Warsaw.
And then it was back on the road, now heading on the motorway to Warsaw, with the end of our first bus journey now finally being in sight. I also completed my very important Duolingo lesson on board this bus, and as the sun began to set, we arrived in the capital of Poland. With the last bit of daylight now gone, we cross over the Vistula river that flows through the heart of the Polish capital. The roads are quite busy around this time, but we make good progress thanks to what I guess we can call creative driving, and eventually, after navigating all the city traffic, we make our way around to Warsaw Airport, which is the end of our first bus journey, some 35 hours after leaving Lapland.
Hello. Right, here we are. Welcome to Warsaw, where we have arrived pretty much on schedule 35 hours later. It's been a long ride, but I'm feeling surprisingly okay. I'm not that tired, but my back and bum is very sore, so a break is very much needed. We still have 3 buses left to go. The next one is fairly short, taking about 8 hours, I think, down to Prague, which will depart in about 6 hours here from the airport. So in the meantime, it's time to do some shopping, get some food, and we can even do a bit of plane spotting, actually. Pretty cool. This is an Embraer plane from LOT, the Polish national airlines, and this is their retro livery. And here's their normal livery on a 737 MAX, I think. Right, enough plane foaming. And off here our FlixBus goes to Krakow for another 4 hours before it'll terminate. This is one of the longest individual FlixBus lines, but we have another one of those long ones to do at the end of the trip. Right, as there's not that much stuff to do here at the airport, let's head into the city center instead. There should also be a shower at Central Station, which would be really useful right now.
So, I just jumped on a train to the city center, and in about 20 minutes I was right in the heart of Warsaw, at the Central Station, right next to the famous Palace of Culture and Science. And with a few hours to kill, I went to look for the showers inside the station.
Found it, but it's taken for the next 17 minutes, but it's also cash only and I don't have any Polish zloty on me, so we can go find an ATM in the meantime, and then hopefully that should align nicely.
Well, turns out getting cash was going to be a bit more difficult than expected.
Well, great start. The bank at the train station, the ATM here doesn't work, so I guess we'll go to the mall across from the station. Hopefully they have an ATM that works. Right, money has been acquired. Let's see if we can find a way to break this down to coins, or if we'll have to go shop first. I saw there's some luggage lockers here, and they also take coins, so maybe there's like one of those machines that can exchange.
Well, of course, the machine only takes 20 and 10 notes, while the lowest thing the ATM would offer was a 50.
Right now we can go to the supermarket, hopefully exchange this, and then go use the shower.
And after finally getting my note exchanged into coins at the supermarket, I thought I was finally going to have my shower. Well, it turns out that the woman who had used it before me had not finished packing after her 20 minutes were up. And as you can see from the footage, she was not standing anywhere visible from the outside. She of course quickly grabbed her remaining stuff and left, but that made the system think my shower ended early.
Right, so this doesn't work anyway, because of course my time ran out when she exited. So I just wasted my money. Now I can go back down, get some more 5s, because I didn't get enough this time, and then we can try again. Going great. Love this. Right, so back down to the luggage lockers, where we can exchange my 20 note to some more 5 coins. Then we can try the shower again, and then hopefully I can actually get a shower. But I guess my chances now of having a proper meal is now over, because this will have ended up taking an hour instead of 20 minutes. Guess what? This machine gave me 2 5s and 5 2s. So now we have to go get that exchanged. I'm so close to losing it. How hard can this be? Hello, can you help me exchange this to 5 coins? Perfect, thank you so much. Right, that's the money situation sorted. Now let's try again. Hopefully we can have a shower this time without disturbance, and everything will work. Right, here we go again. Let's check there's no one in here this time. Good. Good. Well, I'm going to attempt to have a shower now, and hopefully without disturbing, and I will be done within 20 minutes.
This was actually really nice. The pressure was good and the water was warm too. And there was also a toilet inside the space. So overall it was not too bad, but you do have to bring your own towel and toiletries.
I have to say that was really nice. I think after some dinner I am as prepared as you can possibly be for a second night in a row on a bus. And it would have been great to go to the city center now and to a proper restaurant or something, but I don't think I have time, as I need to be on the train to the airport in like 90 minutes. And I also need to do some shopping before we get on the bus, as I have no drinks left.
So unfortunately, there was no time for a quick tour of Warsaw today, as after doing the supermarket shopping, I went over to the mall to grab a quick dinner, charge my devices, and then it was time to head back towards the airport to catch our next bus.
Definitely starting to feel a bit tired now, so this bus can't come soon enough. I'm looking forward to getting a bit of rest on it, hopefully. Our next bus ride is a fairly short one. It's down to Prague, should take around 10 hours, and I'm hoping pretty much just to sleep the entire way. We are departing at midnight roughly, and we'll get in around 10:40 tomorrow at the Florence bus station. It should be one of the easier bus rides on this trip.
And after waiting around a bit more at the airport, here comes our next bus. And this one looks like it's been through something recently. A quick ticket inspection later, and it's time to get on board and find our humble home for the night. And finally, a little before 1 AM, we depart Warsaw Airport, running around 10 minutes behind schedule. Now we will join line N1303 from Olsztyn here at Warsaw Airport, which will take us southwest through Poland and into the Czech Republic, terminating at Florence bus station in Prague in around 10 hours time. We speed along the empty highways into the night, and unfortunately the bus is quite busy and I have a seatmate. But luckily most of the bus, including my seatmate, got off in Łódź. And after a quick visit to the smelly and loud toilet, I attempted to get some sleep. This was actually one of the better buses for sleeping, as the seat offered a good amount of recline and there was no one sitting behind me for most of the night. And despite the bus appearing quite old, it did still have a charging outlet. We are now coming off the motorway just before crossing into the Czech Republic. And here we did something strange, as our bus seemingly just parked in this random small intersection and then did what looked to me like a crew swap. Honestly, I have no idea what was really going on there, but it certainly wasn't an official stop where we picked up passengers. Anyway, we are now crossing the border into the Czech Republic here on this fairly normal 2-lane road through the forest. We are currently traveling through the Karkonosze Mountains, which separate Poland from the Czech Republic, and I'm sure it would be very pretty around here. But as I was very tired, I wanted to take advantage of the good recline on this bus before we get to Prague, so I didn't see much of it.
So we are roughly 50 hours into the trip, which means we are just under halfway overall. Feeling okay so far, quite tired, quite exhausted, my back really hurts, but we gotta push on. The worst part of the trip is definitely still to come later today, where we have a 3.5-hour layover in Zürich in the middle of the night. But so far we're pushing on. We got an hour to go till Prague and just getting to stretch my legs now, which is really nice.
Back on the road, we drive for another hour or so, and then we start to approach the Czech capital. First coming in on large motorways, then wide tram boulevards, and eventually the smaller city streets that leads us to the central Florence bus terminal. We arrive with a delay of around 20 minutes due to a bit of traffic and I think the rest stop not being planned in the schedule.
Right, welcome to Prague, where we arrived 20 minutes behind schedule. Got around 5 hours here now before we will continue to Zürich. I think I'm gonna go get a coffee to freshen up a bit, maybe a pastry, and then we're gonna go do some supermarket shopping because our layover before the bus down to Lisbon is in Zürich in the middle of the night. So first of all, I don't think there'll be a supermarket open, and second of all, I don't want to pay Swiss prices anyway, so...
And that's exactly what I did. First, I went to a nearby coffee shop and got a bit of caffeine in my blood. Then I went for a hike up to Witkov, which not only offers some amazing views of all the trains I can't take on this trip, there's a pretty good view of the city too, and it's not too far from the bus station. Then it was time to head back down the hill and to a supermarket to pick up enough snacks to last me the next 50 hours, as there won't really be another opportunity except at gas stations.
Right, shopping done. Time for some food, and then it's time to go catch the bus.
I went to the pretty good restaurant and pub inside Mazarikovo station, and I had this tortilla thing on their weekday lunch menu, as the more traditional Czech stuff had already sold out, as well as a pilsner of course.
Right, feeling pretty good now. Shopping is done, had a nice lunch, had a beer as well. Mood's high, but the worst is definitely yet to come. So now we're gonna take a 10.5-hour bus ride down to Zürich, followed by a 3.5-hour layover in the middle of the night, and then we're jumping on the longest individual bus ride of this entire trip, 36 hours and 15 minutes down to Lisbon. So I might be feeling good now, but I doubt it at the end. But hey, we're over halfway through now.
And after waiting around for a bit, here comes our next bus, and this one will be the first double-decker bus of our trip, which will take us all the way to Switzerland.
Really not a lot of headspace on these double-deckers, I can't even stand up. See, we're all the way at the front again, over here.
And this was the emptiest bus of the journey so far, with maybe 10-15 people getting on here. But it was also the first FlixBus that offered beer for sale on board. We depart Prague a couple of minutes behind schedule, beginning the next leg of our journey. And on the way out, we catch a glimpse of our old friend that will probably head back to Poland tonight. We have now covered just under 2,700 kilometers since leaving Lapland. And now we will continue on line N106 towards Germany, even briefly dipping into Austria before arriving in Switzerland, where we will be getting off at Zürich in around 10 hours time. But the bus will actually carry on even further through the night to Lyon in France. Leaving Prague, we did get a tour of some of the city's many historic buildings before it was time to get back on the highways towards Germany. I'm currently enjoying the views here from the top deck, and I should mention that I paid extra to select the front seat on all the buses I could, because well, it's only a couple of euros extra per bus, and if I'm spending 107 hours on them, I want the panorama views. And it also gives a bit more variation to the shots you see in the video. Anyway, this bus was pretty nice. The recline was not the best, but there were plugs and cup holders. I also went downstairs to check out the toilet on this double-decker bus, and I think it might actually have been the best one so far.
Oh wow, compared to the single-decker buses this is different, but yeah, there's still not a lot of space. Even have more water. And it doesn't smell too bad, but we are early in the journey, so good start.
After a couple of hours on the motorway, we make our first rest stop at another McDonald's and gas station combo as the last bit of daylight fades.
Right, quick 10-minute break here to rest your legs or grab something from the McDonald's. We'll probably go to McDonald's in Zürich, because I'm guessing that'll be the only thing that's open at like 4 in the morning. And we could really use a place to hang around there while we wait for the 6 AM bus to Lisbon. But yeah, just gonna walk a little bit around, catch some fresh air, and then get back on the bus.
And around 10 minutes later, we are off again, now heading back on the motorway towards the German border, where once again Schengen has failed with another passport check. But luckily tonight it didn't take too long, as the bus was not very busy, and now we are back on the German autobahn all the way to Munich. We approach Munich around 9 PM, even driving past one of the city's most famous landmarks, well, at least if you're a car head, the BMW headquarters. And eventually we make our way all the way to the central bus station at 9:10 PM. We have a 30-minute layover here to allow for crew change, and then it's back on the road towards Austria and Switzerland. But as we have a very long night ahead in Zürich, I decided to try and get some sleep now. I slept through the border crossing into Austria, but here's a shot of us driving through Bregenz, so I can say that Austria was featured in the video. and after spending a grand total of around 30 minutes in Austria, we drove across the border into Switzerland and I went back to sleep.
I guess we're in Zürich now, feeling very tired. Only slept for maybe like 4 hours on that bus. We're like 68 hours into the journey now, and now we gotta kill 3.5 here at the bus station. It's quite boring here, so just gonna walk a bit around into town. I think one of the McDonald's should be open so we can go have a meal or something, but I feel knackered. Yeah, so the bus station waiting room doesn't open till 6 AM, so I think we're gonna try the train station. It's just across the street, basically.
Unfortunately, all the waiting areas and anywhere that wasn't cold in Zürich station was also closed, and just for reference, the temperature in Zürich was around 2 degrees this night.
Yeah, I think the play is there's just 2 McDonald's near the station that's still open. So we can go to one for an hour, and then go to another one for an hour, and then back to the bus station. Get the last hour there. Could definitely use some coffee or something to keep me going. Right, it's now 4 AM. I must say I'm feeling very tired. Normally it's not a problem for me to do like kinda an all-nighter. But doing it after 2 nights of sleeping on a bus, a lot more difficult. Just gonna walk over to the other McDonald's now, get another coffee probably, and then sit there for an hour. Then it'll be 5 AM and we can go to the bus station. I would never have thought I was gonna say this, but I'm kinda looking forward to getting on the FlixBus. Not so much because of the journey, but just because it's a seat where I can just go back, relax a bit, and try and get some sleep again.
However, in retrospect, I don't think I should have said that, as while you would normally save the best for last, in this case without getting too much ahead of myself, I think I've ended up keeping the worst of all the bus journeys for the end.
Right, it's around 5 AM now, so heading back over to the bus station. Probably a good idea to get some caffeine, but I think I'll wear off quite quickly because I am really tired. But yeah, heading to the bus station early because on this bus route you can't reserve seats for some reason. So it's going to be a free fall, so I do want to be there right when the bus pulls up to get hopefully a good seat for the next 36 hours down to Lisbon. Right, back here at the bus station. There doesn't seem to be a bus here yet, so I don't think ours is here. I do see one double-decker parked over there, which might be ours. I think it's a double-decker bus down to Lisbon, so... Yeah, so this one is on Czech license plates, like the one we just were on, so I think it's from the same operator that took us from Prague down to Zürich, so I don't think it's going to be that one, meaning it's parked somewhere else and will show up anytime before departure, hopefully. Gonna go back to the main waiting area. So, this will be the final bus of this mega long trip from Lapland to Lisbon. It's still gonna be 36 hours, which is the longest of any individual bus on this trip, but it feels like we are on the home stretch now. At least that's the state I mentally want to put myself in. Shortly before 6 AM, the bus station toilets opened, which were surprisingly nice, at least compared to the ones on board the buses. And not too long afterwards, our bus pulled in, which turned out to be sort of a double-decker. And as I only had my backpack with me, I was one of the first on board the bus and I could pick any seat I wanted. And here's our home for the next 36 hours down to Lisbon, or well, so I thought. While the 3 other FlixBus routes we caught on this trip have been fairly similar both in terms of comfort and how they operated, this one turned out to be very different. So far, we have covered over 3,300 kilometers since leaving Lapland, and now we are on board the N1156, which is scheduled to, and the keyword here is scheduled, to bring us south into France, where we'll spend pretty much the rest of the day before heading into Spain overnight. Then we'll spend most of the next day crossing Spain, before finally being due into Lisbon late tomorrow afternoon. And so it begins the final bus, 36 hours down to Lisbon, and I'm gonna try and get some sleep now.
And I think I managed around 2 hours of sleep before the sun started to rise, and I also needed to visit the toilet.
Barely any space down here, and it is extremely cold for some reason.
And nothing here seemed to be working, because well, it seems like they forgot to fill the bus's water tank before leaving Zürich. And someone has already left a number 2 here, which I guess will marinate nicely until Lisbon. Anyway, this bus ride only gets weirder from here. Next, we pull into Freiburg, where for some reason our driver seemingly accidentally ended up departing around 10 minutes early. So we drove back down to the nearest roundabout, turned right back around, and pulled back into the same bus station again. Then we departed on time, heading back onto the highway, where some beautiful views of the Alps started to appear. And as someone from one of the flattest countries in the world, mountains just always make me go, wow, that's cool. Anyway, we take a quick break from the mountains to head into the bus station in Geneva. As we leave Geneva, we get a quick glimpse at Lake Léman and its famous water fountain, before heading off into France, where Schengen has failed us once more. The checks here actually took quite a while, and we ended up running a bit late afterwards. The bus had been mostly empty on our way through Switzerland, but it got much busier in France, as we made our way to the many gateway cities to the French Alps, which are very popular with skiers at this time of year. And then we got off the motorway to make our first rest stop of the day.
Journey is pretty comfortable so far. There's good space up in the front seat I've got, and the recline is pretty good. But the bus is quite busy, so I've had a few seatmates by now, which is of course always annoying, but what can you do? I wonder if the bus will be busy. Oh, train! Anyway, as I was trying to say before the train interrupted me, is that the bus is pretty comfortable, legroom is good, and the view up there is nice, especially with scenery like this. The only thing that's a bit annoying is that the bus has been quite busy since we entered France, and I've had a few seatmates by now, which I would really like to not be the case when it's time to sleep. It's just a bit nicer not having somebody that close to you while you sleep, but we can't choose it, so we'll see if the bus empties out by the time it's bedtime, which should be around the time we hit Toulouse, around 10 PM. We still have a long way to go, and I'm starting to really feel sleep deprived by now, so roll on, we gotta push on.
And as I got back on board the bus, I discovered that I was not the only one making the long land journey from Finland. We continue the bus journey now, making our way through France. And to be totally honest with you, nothing really interesting happened the next couple of hours. Well, except we are now currently running around 1 hour behind schedule, as seemingly the rest stop we made not too long ago was not accounted for in the schedule, which in turn made our bus driver drive like an actual piece of crap, flashing anyone who dared to get in his way on the motorway. And he seemingly also just casually ran a red light as we pulled out of the bus station in Valence. The further south we got into France, the louder my fellow passengers also started to be. And the lack of sleep was also really starting to take the toll on me by now. We are now riding into the final bit of daylight, and I was really struggling at this point. The lack of sleep and the loud passengers that were sitting close to me was really starting to get to me. Luckily, I do have my headphones, but I could really have used to have some earplugs on this trip too.
Just under 24 hours to go now. I'm feeling so exhausted. We haven't really had a rest break because we're running late and my feet are so sore. I also have a little less leg room because I'm sharing the space with another passenger and have been for like since just off Geneva, I think. So definitely a bit more rough on this one, but we are making progress and we will get to Lisbon. We are on the home stretch and we'll be there in less than 24 hours now.
And luckily, at 8:30, we finally made another rest stop. And this was where the first of tonight's many shenanigans began, with our bus driver shouting Bilbao, Bilbao, and then moving a couple of passengers to a different bus.
Quite a bit of shenanigans going on here, so I think what's happening is because we are running somewhere between half an hour to an hour late, our stop in Bilbao has just been cancelled and they transferred them to some extra bus, the passengers going there. At least a couple of people went to a bus from the same subcontractor that's running this route on behalf of FlixBus now, so I'm guessing that's what's happening. We'll see if we stop in Bilbao, which is due at 4 AM, so I'll probably be asleep. But yeah, having a little rest break now at standard motorway stop with a McDonald's and stuff. It is really nice to get some fresh air and just stretch and walk a bit after sitting down for, I think, around 8 hours. Our last rest stop was in Chambéry, I think. I'm not too familiar with the French cities in that area, so I guess sorry to the French people, but I'll put it up on screen somewhere. So yeah, been a couple of hours.
After a much needed break, we are finally back on the road. But with it being completely dark outside, there really wasn't much to see. So instead I watched some YouTube, mostly to block out the noise from my fellow passengers. Eventually we made it to Toulouse at around 2:30, and I was very excited to see my seatmate get off here. But unfortunately, as soon as we departed again, they were replaced by a new one. And with that, it was back on the motorway for us, heading into Spain overnight.
Right, we just left Toulouse and now it's like 23, so it's time to get some sleep. Got a new seatmate, which is unfortunate, and somebody's playing loud music or reels or something off his phone right next to me, so great, it's a night bus, great etiquette. Yeah, probably gonna be a rough night, but that's how it is. Good night.
And a rough night it was indeed. I could hear the drivers and other passengers talking loudly throughout the night, and at some point we crossed into Spain, but seemingly we missed out our stop in Hendai for some reason. The bus also got really cold, to the point where I was shivering and had to put on both my hoodie and coat to stay somewhat warm. And after our stop in San Sebastian, we took the direct highway avoiding Bilbao, but then somehow ended up being escorted off the motorway by the police. Honestly, at this point, I have no idea what's actually going on. I'm tired, cold, and feeling absolutely awful. It seems like the route has somehow been blocked and the motorway is now completely closed, and instead we have to take some sort of detour through the local roads and streets. I never found out what actually happened that night, but we made it back to the motorway eventually, had a rest stop in the middle of the night, and now we are on the way to our next scheduled stop at the International Interconnection hub. This is the route we were scheduled to take into Spain, and here's what we actually did. Not long after 6 AM, we are woken up to a loud announcement about our arrival into the Interconnection hub. It was all in Portuguese, so I didn't understand a word of it, but the staff handed out some sort of voucher, and then we pulled off the motorway and into some sort of old rest stop. Then the staff came around to shout a few different city names, presumably because they are changing the schedule again.
Salamanca! Salamanca!
And then we were finally allowed off the bus.
What a confusing mess. I'm gonna explain this whole bus terminal situation in VO because I can't fathom it right now. But what a horrible night. First of all, the bus was kept on freezing. Everybody was wearing coats. It was like 0 degrees outside and the aircon was blasting. Barely got any sleep. There were so many loud other passengers. They kept making announcements and stuff during the night. The drivers were very loud. They were driving like pretty shit and speeding, probably because we're late. And we deviated off route. We did go to Bilbao. They took them on a different bus. Like, overall, the other FlixBus experiences were rather civilized. This one, by comparison, has just been pretty horrible. We still got like 11 hours to go to Lisbon, so a long day ahead. But now we have like a break at this roadside cafeteria while they do the whole bus changeover thing.
And now, voiceover Simon is here to explain this whole operation, which is actually rather cool. So basically, what's going on here is that 7 bus lines from a good chunk of Western Europe are all scheduled to arrive here around 6:30 in the morning. Everyone then gets a 1-hour break to grab some breakfast and change buses, before the buses start departing again at around 7:30, heading to destinations all across the Iberian Peninsula. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, back to Sleepy Simon, who's barely awake.
We got a voucher, so I guess we can get something resembling breakfast. I'm gonna go inside now, but it's hopefully also warmer because I am freezing. Oh, it's so much warmer in here, so much better. And it seems like we get some sort of free or discounted breakfast. So it seems like the bus company pretty much just runs this place and has a few waves like this. It's basically like an airline style hub and spoke model, but for FlixBus routes. Right, I wasn't expecting to get free food and a coffee from FlixBus, but it was a nice gesture, I guess. Especially now that we have to wait like 40 minutes for a bus to go. Was also a good opportunity to use a toilet that's not the one on the bus, so that was nice too. Anyway, we gotta figure out which one is actually our bus now, because, well, ours turned into the one going to Porto. And we need 1156 to Lisbon.
And of course, while most of the buses were already here, the one we needed was being refueled. Anyway, a bit later it showed up, and we are now on board what I hope should be the final bus to Lisbon without too much disruption or discomfort. I managed to get a front row seat again, which was a nice surprise, and then I just had to sit and watch pretty much every other bus depart in front of us, as for some reason we departed around half an hour late. We are now gonna be spending the next many hours just traveling across Spain towards the Portuguese border. And just like with Bilbao, for some reason we skipped Salamanca. Salamanca was one of the cities being shouted at the Interconnection hub, so presumably the passengers going there were transferred to a different bus. Eventually we made a rest stop just before the Portuguese border, where I spotted this bus making the mega long journey from Lisbon to Lviv in Ukraine. That has to be one of Europe's longest journeys on a single bus.
The contrast here in Europe in February is kinda crazy actually. We left Finnish Lapland in minus 18 degrees, fully covered in snow. And here, plus 18. It's a nice spring day basically. You know, I wouldn't even have to wear this hoodie. It's just quite comfy. Like, it's amazing how different and similar Europe generally is. Like, it's the same bus company operating all across the continent. The road standards are pretty much similar and everything, but are yet so different.
And just a few moments after leaving the rest stop, we crossed the border into Portugal, the final country of this mega long journey. And I was gonna say I was feeling great at this point, but things were about to get very weird. So first we skipped our scheduled stop right after the border in Villa Famoso. But then what happened next was even stranger, because instead we stopped in Guarda, which we were not scheduled to at all. And yet, somehow there were people getting off the bus. I mean, you really have to pay attention to the name shouting on the bus, because how else are you gonna make sure you're going to the right destination if you just follow what the FlixBus website says? And then we made our way around to another tiny village where we were also not supposed to stop.
I really don't understand this FlixBus route. Like, we have now done 2 deviations to serve places we weren't meant to, and we have skipped like 3 we were meant to. So, yeah, now we have another rest break in some random town we're not meant to be in. Yeah, it seems like this break is mostly just about people getting a coffee in the cafeteria rather than anything else, so I would wish we were just going non-stop to Lisbon. That takes 3.5 hours from here by motorway, but we are scheduled to do it in another 6 hours, so there'll probably be a few more instances of this, unfortunately.
And yes, there would be, but we are now back on the road, seemingly following the normal schedule and making the correct stops as we wind our way around these tiny Portuguese villages. I assume this route mostly exists to transport Portuguese migrant workers and families living abroad back home. I certainly did not hear a lot of German or French on board the bus. The scenery here is also pretty good, just passing through all these small and cute villages. And just as I thought we had finally resumed normal service and were following the route again, we skipped Coimbra, which is one of the largest cities in all of Portugal. Thankfully, that was the last time we deviated from the route, so here's a map again of the route we were meant to take, and here comes the route we actually took. We are really on the home stretch now. I had my last snacks and beverages, watched the scenery, and napped a bit too. Then we made a stop in Pombal, and not too long afterwards our final rest stop of the trip.
Right, we just made what I believe will be our final rest stop of the journey, as we are just around 2 hours from Lisbon now, and only got 1 more stop to go before the 2 terminals in Lisbon. Really looking forward to getting there now. I just smelled myself, and I smell fucking horrible, of course. Luckily there's been no one sat next to me for the past few hours, because I think that would have been very unpleasant for them. Really looking forward to getting a proper lie down, having a shower, just like normal human amenities again. It's for sure been an interesting journey, but would I recommend this? Probably not. Anyway, just a little bit more to go, and we are definitely on the home stretch now.
So, as we now make our way to the Portuguese capital, I guess it's time to sum up this entire trip. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised by the buses themselves. Sure, the toilets were a bit questionable at times, but apart from that, every bus was in a mostly good state. All of them had add-seat power, individual air vents, Wi-Fi, and were kept clean. All the buses except the last one are described as a mostly civilized experience, at least as far as bus travel goes. I've watched videos of people doing stuff like this in America before, from the likes of Miles in Transit, and honestly, in comparison, FlixBus in Europe does not seem too bad. We have just arrived at our penultimate stop at Lisbon's Oriente bus terminal, which I actually could have gotten to around 15 hours quicker on a different itinerary. But as FlixBus also serves Cederius, which is a little further from Lapland than Oriente, I had to get one of the itineraries which took me there. And now we are making our final kilometers on the roads of Lisbon over to Cederius, which will mark the end of our journey. We travelled on 4 different bus lines, using 6 different buses to get us through 12 different countries, covering roughly 5,700 kilometers, taking a total of 107 hours and 9 minutes. This is the end of the longest FlixBus journey you can buy in Europe.
And right, here we are, just under 107 hours later, and after traveling just under 6,000 kilometers, welcome to Lisbon Zoo. This has been the longest journey you can make with FlixBus in Europe. I guess if you like this kind of content, watch my video where I do basically the same thing in Denmark by clicking the card up here. And if you made it all the way to the end, make sure to subscribe. I think I deserve it. Right, off to the hotel.